Thank you for joining Wars of the Roses. As we conclude with Part 9, Miscellaneous from Questions and Answers, Fundamentals of the Occult Sciences by Manly P. Hall. Miscellaneous Part 9. What is the Philosopher's Stone? The alchemists of the Middle Ages, following the ancient formulas of Hermes the Egyptian, sought to accomplish the three ends of the Hermetic art. The three goals of alchemical research were the elixir of life, the Philosopher's Stone, and the transmutation of metals. The elixir of life was the mysterious, subtle essence which healed all disease and bestowed immortality. The Philosopher's Stone was the mysterious ruby diamond or the blood diamond, the wise man's stone, which bestowed all knowledge and power and rulership over all the forces of nature. The transmutation of metals was the secret of regeneration, the restoration of all the corrupted values of life and security. Of course, alchemy was divine chemistry, the secret of the perfection of life through the disciplines of wisdom. The Philosopher's Stone was the perfected inner life of the individual, his own diamond soul. He who perfects his own soul possesses the touchstone of the wise. The luminous soul aura of the enlightened human being is the symbolical diamond, and he who has achieved to it lacks nothing that is necessary to wisdom and divine authority. The laboratory is life, the retort is the body of the alchemist himself, and the mysterious processes which take place within the retort represent the transmutation of the base elements of life, brought about by the living of the divine art. Can peace in the outer life be attained without attaining peace within? To the average person, peace means happiness. The term actually signifies stillness and is the dying out of the contentions, frictions, and irritations which ignorance and intemperance consistently set up in the human consciousness. There is a wonderful phrase in the Arabian Nights entertainment: happiness must be earned. In these few words is set forth the philosophical formula for well-being. In the same way, peace must be earned. It is the purpose of each evolving soul to perfect within its own nature a condition of well-being sufficient to assure tranquility and security. Peace is not in the world, it is in the soul. The contentions of outer existence cease when the soul becomes one with truth. Only when the inner life is established in wisdom can the outer life be at peace with its world. Does it harm one to attend spiritualistic meetings? In answering this question, it is not my desire to discredit the sincerity of spiritualists, but rather to point out certain hazards which believing people enthused with an idea are apt to overlook. A spiritualistic seance is a negative vortex of psychical forces. Such a vortex draws into itself decarnate entities of various kinds and also numerous larvae or elementals of the astral world. The average medium has no power to control the entities which impinge themselves upon the plexus of the sympathetic nervous system. In the seance, both the medium and the sitters are helpless victims of such malefic entities as may care to attack them. Therefore, there is constant danger in seances that the sitters will take away with them elemental beings which have attached themselves to various parts of the aura. These elementals may later attack the physical resistance by sapping the etheric body. When this condition has gone on for a time and resistance has been greatly lowered, the elemental or malicious decarnate entity may obsess the living person and finally drive the ego out of its body. While such a condition is an extreme case, it is a hazard which every person must be prepared to face who encourages any form of negative psychism or permits themselves to take part in seances. The miseries caused by the Ouija board, the fallacies of automatic writing, and the general hazard of psychic phenomena has ruined more lives than a few. How can a drone become useful at 50? Now that I understand things better, I want to be useful. The first thing for you to do is to forget that you are 50. Remember that you are an eternal self, that before the world existed you were, and that after the world ends you will still be. Time is an illusion, and greatness rises above time. Many of the greatest men and women of the world accomplished little, if anything, before 50. When you think of accomplishment in philosophical terms, you are thinking of something that transcends time and place and becomes part of a cosmic plan of action, extending through hundreds of lives. Take stock of yourself. What have you learned in the 50 years of the present life? What do you know that others ought to know? What can you do that needs to be done? Remember that in the great craft of the temple builders, we all begin as apprentices. Our first task must always be something small and comparatively insignificant. The beginning of wisdom is to do the thing at hand. You may still need to spend time in the perfection of your own disposition, the mastery of temperament and attitude. You may still have responsibilities to others around you which have not been fulfilled. The example of what you have accomplished and what philosophy has done for you may be a great inspiration to those with whom you come in contact. Think noble thoughts, dream beautiful dreams, labor constructively from day to day. And when you are ready for a greater accomplishment, the work that you are to do will come to hand. The universe always has work for those who are qualified to perform it. Is a balance between introversion and extroversion better than introversion, even though the latter is associated with serious thought but no social contact? This is a psychological question involving factors little understood by even the most advanced psychologist. Introversion, or the subjectification of action, is a retiring from the circumference to the center of action. Except in rare cases, introversion results in inhibition, and inhibitions lead to most of the evils which afflict the metaphysically minded. On the other hand, extroversion, the complete objectification of self, is the phenomenon of energies rushing constantly from a center to the circumference. In introversion, there is not enough expression, and in extroversion, there is not enough control. It is the constant duty of the wise man to preserve a balance between expression and control. Introversion is one of the most common diseases of the learned, and extroversion is the plague of the uninformed. Men who think much do little, and with much action there is usually small thought. To bind each action to an adequate reason and to visualize each thought as manifesting in an appropriate consequence is to keep open and well regulated the courses of energy in the human consciousness. A serious thinker must think seriously concerning the application of his thoughts to their reasonable ends in action. To think constantly and do nothing is not the way to become wise. To weary the faculties with constant strain and never rest them through proper relaxation from mental effort is to endanger the reason and impair the health. A well-balanced thinker always has a proper relaxation and strives to prevent a narrowness of viewpoint by keeping in reasonably close contact at all times with other persons of different thoughts and ideas. Such a procedure will, in the long run, contribute more to the philosophy itself than constant application to abstractions. What place have insects in the scheme of evolution? Are they a legitimate life stream? In the old teachings, we learn that insect life is the survival of some of the earliest organisms which existed upon the earth. They are stragglers that were unable to keep up with the life waves to which they belonged. They have consequently gone through a certain retrogression and will not be able to continue their unfoldment until the development of a new life wave. They might therefore be regarded as minute negative centers of life, exceedingly responsive to the mental impulses of higher organisms. The destructive tendencies in insect life are not really inherent to the insect, but are communicated to it by higher organisms. Thus, insect pests, bacterial epidemics, etc., are always aggravated by waves of destructiveness in human behavior. Insects are instruments of karma, and their viciousness is due to the viciousness in human thought and emotional impulses in the animal kingdom. There is an old tradition to the effect that when man achieves to the golden age, disease, sin, and death will cease, and the microorganisms which now carry disease and torment men will cease their activities. The story of the insect is concealed under the allegory of Pandora and her box. Do animals have consciousness after death? What is the difference between the spirit of an animal and that of man? Philosophy teaches that the eternal essence, which we call God, and which is the sum and origin of all things, is as much in the animal as it is in man, and therefore the plant of the field or the animal that roams among the hills is as surely an immortal creature as is man. The difference between the various forms of life which we see is not in the invisible spiritual nature which is within, but is rather a difference of unfoldment of the objective vehicles by means of which the invisible nature manifests itself. As the animal has not the rational faculties of man, man's sphere of consciousness after death would be inconceivable to creatures with plant or animal consciousness. but the law of evolution is gradually unfolding the potentialities of the lower kingdoms of nature, and in time the animal will unfold its consciousness to a degree fully as great as that of man. And altogether the mineral, the plant, the animal, and the man are being swept along to endless stages of growth and unfoldment, until finally all attain to that perfection which is the ultimate condition of unity with eternal life. Because the superphysical bodies of the animal are not highly individualized, there is little after-death consciousness. The animal soul or entity returns almost immediately to the physical world. The interval between incarnations is frequently only a few weeks, whereas man, who has more highly individualized his subjective nature, usually remains out of incarnation for at least 1,000 years. If idealists believe in the sacredness of life, declaring it sinful to destroy even the smallest creatures, do they have any solution to the problem of what to do with vermin, bugs, and poisonous insects? In all matters of this kind, it is wise to realize that we are most truly philosophic when we accomplish the greatest good to the greatest number. Very often, by obeying the letter of the law, we crucify the spirit. The Jains, a very strict East Indian religious sect, employ a man to stand with a broom in front of their temples and tenderly whisk to one side all creeping and crawling things that may chance to stray across the pavement, so that no living thing will be injured or stepped on by passers-by. If after the individual has used every precautionary measure, such as cleanliness, etc., it becomes a matter where various pests are a menace to the community, it is then necessary to destroy them in order to accomplish the greatest good to the greatest number. For example, rats are very often the carriers of plagues and epidemics, which will sweep through whole districts and exact a terrific toll of human life. It is quite impossible for an individual to live an absolutely harmless life. The very air he breathes contains minute organisms which must die in order that he may continue. The growing tree absorbs into itself the life of lesser plants and creatures, and thus lives at the expense of the weaker. The water we drink in a mass of animalcula that are just as surely alive as horses, dogs, and cattle. We may and should reduce our destructiveness to a minimum, but we cannot become entirely free of other lives which must be sacrificed for our survival. The point is this: if we must kill, it is also our duty to give life. If we must destroy, there is only one reason for our perpetuation, that we produce more than we destroy. If multitudes of lives must be sacrificed for our continuance, we owe to nature a debt which we can liquidate only by making the best possible use of the time which is given to us at so great a cost to other things. The most foolish and wicked are those who do not realize what must die that we may live. Therefore, if we must kill to live, let us not live to kill, but using the energy which is given to us, dedicate our lives to constructive labors by which all humanity and nature may be benefited. In this way, we justify our existence. As the lesser is sacrificed for man, so man in turn must be willing to be sacrificed for something still greater in the cause of that divine power which is as far above man as man is above the reptiles and the vermin. Do people appreciate only what they pay well for? Please explain the money principle in connection with spiritual instruction. All neophytes entering the ancient mystery temples brought with them valuable gifts or such as they had, not because the gifts themselves were regarded as payment for instruction, but because only the individual who was willing to sacrifice the best that he had for that which he desired to know was worthy of instruction. Money is a symbol of value in this modern world. The average person prizes it above every other possession. Therefore, it is proper and suitable that he should give it as a symbol of sacrifice and appreciation for the priceless treasure which he receives. Any person having much and selfishly refusing to support adequately that which he believes need not hope for any great measure of illumination. It is not the lack of the gift that will stand in his way, but the lack of the spirit of giving. If we are to do good, does it matter if we hurt people's feelings doing it? This question reminds me of an old friend, a Methodist minister, whose motto was, "If I don't hurt somebody's feelings, I'm not preaching the gospel." Seriously speaking, the whole answer to this question depends upon the interpretation of the word good. There are two kinds of illusionary good, my good and the other fellow's good. Both of these are often at direct variance with that universal good which alone is real. To do good is a fine art, and those who dabble in reform without a depth of wisdom, of vast tolerance and great experience in life often do more harm than good. It is true that we are to do good, but it is also true that we are to become wise. And it is proven by experience that only those who are wise can really do good. When action is dominated by opinions or selfishness or sympathy or any emotion or thought that is not grounded in actual fact, our efforts to do good usually lose the name of action. It is well to bear in mind in our efforts to do good the Socratic definition of this virtue. That which is true, necessary and beautiful is good. Our most common mistake in attempting to do good is to overlook the factor of beauty in action. That is why we are likely to hurt people's feelings. Others often are not as offended by what is said as by the way it is said. There are beautiful ways to do everything and they are usually acceptable, but when beauty fails in the deed itself usually misses its mark. Beauty is not weakness or sentiment, it is the divinity in the deed. Nowhere is beauty more needed in action than in reforms and corrections, and there is nowhere where it is less likely to appear. It is true we are all here to do good, but if we do not wish our ministrations to inadvertently contribute to the world's evils, our labors must reflect the beauty and understanding which we have developed within ourselves. Please give an explanation of people being divinely protected. We so often hear someone say that they have no fear of anything because they are divinely protected. Does not the law of cause and effect render this idea untenable? Most exponents of the cult of divine protection derive their ideas from one of several systems of mental metaphysics which seek to make man right with his world by surrounding him with a wall of mental or auto-suggestions. It would be folly to deny that mental attitude is capable of producing a marked effect upon the external life of the individual, but effects that are inconsistent with the spiritual facts of the individual's life are impermanent and consistently disastrous. All enlightened systems of philosophy and mysticism agree that it is impossible in the long run to fool the law of cause and effect. If by mental processes we attract to ourselves things which are not our own by merit, our very possessions become our misery, and everything we gain is a loss to ourselves. No person under any condition can be divinely protected from the effects which he has set in motion by his own causations. He may build a mental wall of defense by which he temporarily deflects the thunderbolts of karma, but this is not divine protection, this is mortal will defying divinity. In the old fables, mortal will under the name of Satan and his angels defies the edict of heaven and sets up its kingdom in the abyss. Mental metaphysicians have much in common with the fallen angel. When we resist that which we have caused to come to us, when we refuse to acknowledge the debts which we have made, when we surround ourselves with a wall of mental electricity, we are not divinely protected. We are simply resisting for a little while those consequences which must ultimately catch up with us. Worse than this, our attitude towards destiny being wrong, we usually are extravagant in our desires and unreasonable in our attitudes, thus bringing the sum of our debts much higher than it would normally be. The only protection with which we can safely surround ourselves is the invincible armor of our own integrity. Man is not protected by the honor, but by the honor that is within him. Please list the best works to read on the interpretation of the Grecian myths. The mythological writings of the Greeks are founded for the most part upon the secret traditions of the Orphics. According to the old records, Orpheus, whose name means dark of skin, brought the ancient wisdom religion from India to the progenitors of the classical Hellenes. It is impossible to interpret Greek mythology philosophically without the Orphic keys. The writings of Homer and Hesiod were derived from the initiation pageantry of the Orphic cult, perpetuated in the Eleusinian and Dionysian mysteries. Books dealing with this obscure subject in an enlightened manner are few and for the most part rare. Of particular importance are the translations and writings of Thomas Taylor, the Platonist. His mystical hymns of Orpheus is important, also his dissertation on the Eleusinian and Bacchic mysteries and his essay on the Odyssey of Homer, which serves as an appendix to his translations of the 4 books of Plotinus on abstinence from animal food. Of more recent writers, probably the most reliable is G.R.S. Mead, whose splendid little work Orpheus is derived in some parts from original Greek sources. In other parts, it is a summary of Thomas Taylor's researches. What is sorcery? Sorcery is black magic. In the ancient Atlantean world, a division took place in the occult arts. This resulted in what was called the two paths, white and black magic. White magicians were designated masters of the right and black magicians masters of the left. The difference between white and black magic is essentially the difference in motive. White magic is founded upon unselfishness, black magic upon selfishness. A student of the ancient wisdom is white or black according to the merit of the impulse which urges him to accomplishment and action. Sorcery is the use of occult knowledge for selfish personal purposes at the expense of others. When we use superior wisdom to gain advantage over those more ignorant than we are, then we are sorcerers. When we use superior knowledge to aid and perfect others, then we are white magicians. There is a third term, natural magic, that is used by Aboriginal peoples who are able to control the elements of nature, as in the causing of rain, the practices of the medicine man, and the shaman. Natural magic, like the marvels of science, is impersonal. But the moment moral factors are involved, it becomes white or black, according to its constructive or destructive use. Metaphysics today has in its ranks thousands of little parlor sorcerers, thinking prosperity, meditating for power, and scheming occultly for superiority over each other. Is not a physical demonstration of prosperity an evidence that the person has accomplished an inner illumination and is able to control the law of supply and demand? This subject is larger than might first appear, involving several factors which must be considered separately. Persons possessing wealth must derive it from one of three sources. They either inherit it, acquire it through effort, or receive it through circumstances such as the accidents of gift or providence. In other words, they are born wealthy, achieve wealth, or have wealth thrust upon them. In any case, possession is an aspect of karma. If we believe philosophy, we must acknowledge that no one can possess a great measure of anything except by the decrees of universal compensation. Anyone whose action causes wealth will have wealth or its equivalent in this or a future life. However, this is only the beginning of the matter. Wealth is not an end, but an incident in the unfolding of human consciousness. Furthermore, wealth is one of the heaviest burdens that a man must bear, for by its very nature it is a constant temptation to abuse and misuse. Wealth is not as difficult to achieve as many people believe. Nearly anyone can become wealthy who is willing to sacrifice enough of other qualities to achieve wealth. It is 1,000 times easier to be rich than it is to be wise, for shrewdness will accumulate money. But only an inner illumination resulting from hundreds of lives devoted to truth and integrity can result in wisdom. I cannot see that wealth is any evidence of spiritual superiority. I would say rather that it is a great opportunity for the accomplishment of good. If this good is accomplished, it is termed in India a virtue, and out of the virtue of many lives come wisdom and illumination. Soul power is not measured by possession, but by the enlightened use of possession. A life devoted to accumulation is not one to pattern after. Wealth at best is a material thing beset with material uncertainties and subject to all of the vicissitudes of the physical state. He who possesses it is limited and narrowed by its responsibilities and worries. If wealth descends upon an individual from his karma, it should be accepted with humility and resignation by the spiritually minded person. But to make wealth the goal of living and to spend a lifetime in the accumulation of it can scarcely be regarded as an enlightened course of action. Spirituality infers detachment, or rather more correctly, an attachment to values. Each person prizes much that which is the measure of his own consciousness. When unfolding reason reveals the beauty and desirability of spiritual things, the intellect inevitably turns from low values, which no longer satisfy and are therefore no longer proper ends of effort. To say that the demonstration of material prosperity is an evidence of inner enlightenment is to confuse two irreconcilable standards of value. We may as well say that wisdom is worth $1.25, or that illumination is worth so much an hour. Spiritual values have no material equivalence, nor are they justified or manifested upon the physical plane. Render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's, but do not try to confuse the law of the spirit with the ambitions of matter. Please explain the mystery of omens. Nearly all of the important events of history have been preceded by prophetic circumstances. Visions have appeared in the sky like the mysterious sword of flame that hung over Jerusalem before its fall. Curious accidents have occurred presaging evil, and coming events have presented themselves as dreams and visions. Nearly all the great changes of human affairs have followed appropriate warnings, and whole books have been written describing and proving the general occurrence of omens. Occultism explains the appearance of strange portents of approaching fate in a very simple way. All major changes in the physical life of man or his world are the effects of causes which exist not in the physical world, but in the superphysical planes of the universe. An earthquake, for example, exists as an archetype or pattern in the invisible world long before the physical phenomenon takes place. Seismic cataclysms, which will not occur in the material world for centuries, already exist as archetypes in the superphysical body of the planet. These archetypes are established by the law of karma, and the force of them is built up by the repetition of the causes which originally precipitated the pattern. Let us say, for example, that karma decrees that a continent and its inhabitants shall be submerged by volcanic forces. This fact, having been metaphysically established, is intensified by the destructive tendencies in the life and action of the doomed people. At last, after centuries of crystallization, the archetypal pattern reaches such definite proportions that this psychical pattern moves the physical elements into agreement with the metaphysical design or shape. It follows that archetypes in the process of crystallization become more and more tangible or physical. The result is that mediums, psychics, and other supersensitive persons may sense or see the archetype before the physical phenomenon is precipitated. Also, the increasing force building up in the archetype occasionally produces curious, unaccountable happenings. These happenings are not unlike the pranks played by electricity under certain conditions, for the force behind all archetypes is basically electrical, but a far more subtle form of electricity than can be recognized by material science. Premonitions are truly coming events, casting their shadows before them, because these events occur in the invisible world long before they can be felt in dense material forms. The archetypal ethers of the earth already carry locked within them the forms or patterns of all of the important changes that will take place geologically or socially for the next several thousands of years. The mind of man not only remembers the past, but plans the future. And the intellectual substances of the earth already bear the thought patterns of a wide variety of changes and achievements. All of the inventions and as yet undiscovered secrets of nature are plainly existent in the archetypal sphere, and it is from this world of patterns that men draw their discoveries, creations, and compositions. Mozart once observed that every piece of music that he composed he actually heard, as though played in the air by an invisible orchestra, before he wrote it down. Many great inventions have come as visions and dreams, for under certain circumstances the creative type of mind can contact the sphere of archetypes, where all things yet to be known exist as living pictures composed of vibrant ether. Have we entered the Aquarian Age yet? There is some difficulty in determining astronomically the actual time of the sun's ingress into a zodiacal sign. Certain arbitrary factors must be accepted before any satisfactory calculation is possible. According to the opinions of modern astronomers, the sun is now in about the 8th degree of Pisces, and has therefore about 8 degrees yet to retire before it retrogrades by the precessional motion out of the sign and into Aquarius. The precessional motion is about 1 degree in 72 years. According to this calculation, it will be nearly 600 years before the sun actually enters the sign of Aquarius at the equinox, and the Aquarian Age has its beginning. Of course, the sun changes degree every 72 years, and these degree changes are in themselves capable of producing a considerable change in the life of man. I know that several metaphysical movements are of the opinion that we have already entered the Aquarian Age, or will very soon do so, but I do not believe that these organizations can justify their opinions astronomically. Has the sixth root race started to appear upon the earth? According to the metaphysical philosophy of the Brahmins, human life upon the earth manifests through 7 outpourings which are called races. The first of these races is called the Polarian, and inhabited a vast polar continent hundreds of millions of years ago. The second was the Hyperborean, referred to by the Greeks as a semi-divine race dwelling in the land north of the winds. The third was the Lemurian, a dark civilization existing upon a continent involving what is now the Indian Ocean and the Australasian archipelago. The fourth was the Atlantean, whose great island continent filled a considerable part of what is now called the Atlantic Ocean, extending from Greenland on the north to a southern latitude approximately parallel with Brazil. The fifth, to which we now belong, is called the Aryan and had its origin in north-central Asia about 1 million years ago. The sixth and seventh races are yet to come. The sixth race will be derived from the highest types produced by the fifth race and may spring up among several progressive peoples simultaneously. The application of the term sixth root race personality to describe a precocious or unusual type of human being is a figure of speech rather than a scientific fact. I question very much if true sixth root race types are as yet appearing, as many thousands of years must pass before the advent of the sixth race. It is quite possible, however, that tendencies which will later develop into sixth root race qualities are beginning to appear as progressive impulses in our present society. Some believe that the sixth root race will emerge from the chemistry of interracial minglings in America. Others feel that Russia is the logical cradle inasmuch as great social experiments are being carried on there. Australia has also been advanced as a possible field for sixth root race activities. It is my opinion that pioneers from the several subdivisions of our present race will form the nucleus for the future human type, and that when the time comes for the sixth race to be objectified from the physical world, a new continent will rise, probably in the Pacific Ocean, to serve as a theater of action for the new race. Do you believe that we are about to enter the Golden Age? In the mythology of the Greeks, the life of the earth is divided into 4 great periods called ages. The first was the Golden Age, the second the Age of Silver, the third the Bronze Age, and the fourth the Age of Iron. These ages correspond with the yugas of the Hindus, which also divide the cycles of evolution into quaternary periods. The Golden Age of the Greeks is described by the poets as a time in which no evil existed and all nature dwelt together in beauty and harmony. Neither sin nor death had come into the world, and Pandora's box with all its ills had never been opened to loose its misfortunes upon man. For thousands of years, the idealists of the race have dreamed of the return of the Golden Age. They have envisioned man growing wiser and less selfish, evil ceasing, and humanity restored at last to an enlightened and cooperative condition. There is no evidence, however, at the present time that we are in any imminent danger of a general reform. Men grow more selfish with each passing day, and we must experience much more of sorrow and suffering before we will voluntarily dedicate ourselves to a program of enlightenment. We now live in the Age of Iron, or the Kali Yuga or Black Age of the Hindus. Until this cycle ends, and alas many thousands of years remain yet to run, we cannot look for the return of the paradisaical state described in the ancient fables. Yet the Golden Age must finally come again, for all the progress of the race, though slow and apparently uncertain, is leading inevitably to a better day when humanity, tired of self-inflicted woes, will depart from their present course of evil and bring to reality the utopias of their dreams. What is the most useful thing in this world? Many people will differ in answering this question. Some might say electricity, others printing, others the telephone. Probably no better answer to this question can be found than that which Thales gave to the Pharaoh of Egypt. The great Greek sophist said, "Virtue is the most useful thing in the world, for by the presence of it all other things are made beautiful and good, and without it even the most spectacular accomplishment is hurtful and incomplete." Is astrology a true science? Astrology and alchemy are the oldest sciences known to man. According to the traditions of the Hindus, the astrological arts were practiced by the Atlanteans and descended from the peoples of the lost continent of Atlantis to the progenitors of the Aryans. Astrology has been cultivated by all of the civilized nations of the world. As Richard Proctor observed, no civilization has reached a high degree of culture without including astrology among its branches of learning. It follows, then, that the effects of the heavenly bodies upon terrestrial affairs have been observed and recorded for many thousands of years. It would seem evident that no system of learning so easily demonstrable could have survived the vicissitudes of 100 ages unless it was founded in demonstrable truth. The ancients convinced themselves by countless observations that the heavenly bodies not only influence mundane affairs, but that this influence is regular and consistent, and the elements thereof can be reduced to an exact science, the only exact prophetic science man has yet evolved. Astrology should never be confused with astrologers, any more than law should be confused with lawyers, medicine with doctors, and religion with theologians. Man, as an interpreter of universal truths, is limited in his interpretations by the inevitable imperfections in himself. In competent hands, astrology, at its present state of development, compares favorably with, shall we say, medicine in the matter accuracy. The physician cannot diagnose a disease infallibly, nor can the average astrologer predict infallibly. It would be entirely unreasonable to reject medicine because physicians make mistakes, and it is equally unreasonable to expect astrologers to be infallible when no other science is expected to exhibit infallibility, either in its theories or its practice. Anyone working sincerely with astrology can easily convince himself that the science is founded upon sound and accurate principles. He can also prove that it works, and the occasional inconsistencies or exceptions which occur only stimulate him to greater endeavor and more thorough acquaintance in the elements of his science. There are too many accurate predictions recorded in history to deny prophecy. Too many people have had their character correctly analyzed and the coming events of their lives correctly predicted for astrology to be easily disproved. The mere fact that modern science denies astrology without adequate examination means nothing. The bodies of so-called learning are known to be extremely negative and critical in their attitude towards all occult and metaphysical matters. Science, however, has never disproved astrology and never can. Maturity of thought will finally bring all forms of material learning back to the metaphysical foundations which were laid in the first ages of the world. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment. And if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Roses. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.